Okay, so for this part of the project, whether you decided to do your pinch pot or slab method, you should have had your work stored in a plastic bag like this, and everything should be nicely zipped. And that should have been stored in your shelf, whatever class you're in. So just be really, really careful. Once your pieces are in your bag, they're handled very carefully by you. So you always make sure that you put your hands underneath the pieces when you're transporting them in your bag, right? If you hold them just like you're holding a bag, they'll fall, they'll fall around in the bag and they'll get all bent out of shape. And sometimes it's like even you have to start over, so you have to be really careful that when you put it in the bag, you're very gentle, and then when you take it out of the storage, you're very gentle, and then when you open your bag, you're gentle. So always be super gentle because this clay is full of water, and it's very soft, so it can very easily be ruined. So just be really careful when you take your piece out of the bag. Super, super careful. Okay, so the purpose of this video was just to show you how to finalize your pieces. So in the last video, I showed you just the beginning of the slab method, and I chose a teardrop shape as my base. And then I rolled everything out flat, and then I cut these walls and I rolled them around. I used welding and scoring to attach this wall all around, and this is like the final form, okay? But I haven't finished it with any of my decoration. So when we look around, let's see, does it have any cracks? No. Okay, here there's a little bit of, there's some marks here, maybe from where I touched it. Okay, and this part right here, I might want to shave it off a little bit because it's kind of sticking out. So these are like little minor things that you should do. You should hold up your piece and look all around to make sure that every little bit is perfect. So I might want to like shave this bottom part out a little bit. I'm not going to do that right now. What I wanted to show you first was some really common things that happen in pinch pots. So this is pretty good. Like I'm ready to move on to adding my decoration here. So I'll come back to that in a minute. But the pinch pot, this is kind of where we left off. And I did go around with my wet finger, right? So I put a little finger in here. I put my finger just a little bit in the water, just barely wet. And then I'm using circular motions to get all the cracks to go away, because that's part of your rubric. If you have any visible cracks, you're not going to get a 3, okay? But I wanted to address this thing, which is that in pinch pots, it's really common when you use that method to get some parts that are higher. So like this, the lip of this wall is higher than this over here. And what you can do is take it in your hand like this and keep that form and just slam it against the table, like not hard, but enough so that it kind of pushes things down, and that helps. But you'll find that when you start pinching it again to make all of the widths of the walls uniform, like we talked about, you're going to have some areas that stick up more than others. And so how you deal with that is with this is a loop tool, and this is really helpful. So you can kind of, I already started doing it here. Find the lowest point, so this would be this, right? And now we're going to try to make everything around that same level. So I'm basically going to like shave this off. So this is called a loop tool. It is used for subtractive sculpture. So that means taking clay away. So I'm very gently, I'm just going around and I'm kind of shaving parts of it off. Okay, so any part that's really sticking up a lot, I'm just going to shave it off with my loop tool. And I can kind of pull it a little bit, use my other finger for support, and that really helps me to shave things off without having to move it a lot with my fingers and destroy other parts that I don't want to destroy. So the loop tool helps you remove clay without changing the overall structure of whatever you're working on, and that's really, really helpful. The wetter, like this is pretty dry. This part is very wet, so it's going to be easier for me to shave it off. So you might want to add a little bit of water when you do this. So just go around and make sure that you're shaving off parts of the top that are not even. That way your piece is nice and consistent all around. I'm going to add a little water here so that it's easier for me to shave this part off. And use your fingers as support. So don't just shave it, you have to kind of put your fingers here to support it a little bit. Okay? So once you do that and you get things more even, then you can dip your fingers back into your water and you can start refining it, okay? And I'm not gonna keep going too much with this. You will do that on your own. What I wanted to address now is how to do some kind of decorative part. So you could either be texture, or it could be adding an actual sculpture, like some other piece of clay that you're adding for decoration, or you could also make a lid or a saucer or a handle, okay? So let's say, for example, that I wanted to add texture to this as my decoration. It's totally up to you what you choose. You can use something as simple as a pencil. What I like to do, this is really nice, is you can just hold it in your hand and just stick it in and pull it out, right? So I'm gonna stick it in just a little bit, and I'm gonna keep doing that in a very consistent way. So I'm making sure that where I do this, I'm keeping the same kind of distance between each one over and over again, and I'm getting this nice honeycomb pattern. So as long as you have the same amounts between each one, you have this beautiful pattern of texture. And now it's so much more interesting, okay? So just doing that, either all over the inside or all over the outside of your bowl, if you do it really well, and you're very careful about how you add it, that would be decorative features that would give you a 4, okay? So just be really creative about what you want to use. You could use a pencil from around the room, you could use a marker, you could use other things like, I could also get something that's more like this, like a toothpick. I could do something like this on the outside. I could just do simple indentations. And if you ask me to give you some fabric to choose from, we also have some fabric that's really textured. And another thing you can do is you can wrap that fabric around your piece and kind of give it some pressure, and that will create a texture as well. So there are lots of different ways to add texture. So I want you to just think about all the possible things that you can use and go with it and just see what you can do. So that's only if you want to add texture. If you want to add, let's say you wanted to add a lid, this is how you would do it. You would get your piece. So let's say we wanted to add a lid to this. Or better yet, we could add a lid to this so you can see a little bit more of how I would do it. So I would get a piece of clay like so. I would make it flat because it's going to be a lid, right? And I know that I'm going to roll this out. It has to be long enough to cover this, okay? So make sure that when you're adding your clay, you're aware of how it needs to travel this way. Okay, so you might want to make it kind of narrow. And then you're going to get your roller, and you're going to give it some pressure in the middle first, and then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now make sure that when you roll it out, your slab not only is even thickness all around, which this is, right? So this is pretty good, but also it has to be big enough that when you put your piece on top of it, there's an extension around, so there's a perimeter, okay? And that's important because of what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to put my piece, if I'm making a lid, on this flat slab. I'm going to make sure that there is clay all around it. I'm going to move this over here a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to use a cutting tool, and I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm using this as my template. I don't want it to be exactly the same size because then there's a chance it wouldn't fit. It might fall into the piece. So I'm going to go like slightly further out. So I'm going to leave kind of a margin. Okay, so this margin is probably perfect. I'm going to keep about like a 1/4 of an inch margin all the way around my piece. So this is what you would do if you chose to make a lid for your piece. If you weren't interested in texturing it and you weren't interested in adding a sculpted piece to it, this is another option for you. You could make a lid for your piece, or you could make handles for your piece, or you could make a saucer for your piece. And if you made a saucer, it would be almost the same process as what I'm doing now. Once you've cut something off, you can just kind of get rid of it like that, so it's easier. And then I come over here. And again, I cut all around. I'm leaving a margin of about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, because we want our lid to fit really well. Okay, and now we're just going to gently separate them. And now let's see what we do. Okay, well, let's see how we did. So we have this lid, and if I set it on, it's pretty much perfect. Okay, so this is how it would look. It's pretty big on this side, so I probably would shave off even more around this area. But you don't want to shave off too much because you don't want it to fall into your piece, okay? But that's the idea. And then, of course, you do the same thing. Just make sure you smooth it out. Maybe here, if you want to do texture on your lid, you can. It's up to you, okay? But that's how you would do a lid, okay? Now, I'm just going to set this aside. Let's just say that I did want to do a sculpture piece, an added sculpted piece. I could do something really simple. Like, this kind of has like a teardrop shape or a leaf-like shape. So I could even just take what I've already done. So I'm taking another slab. So I'm just going to flatten a piece of clay. This would be a really simple way to add an additive sculpture, that's adding on as opposed to subtractive, taking away. And how can you use additive sculpture to decorate your piece? So one simple way in this case that might make sense would be maybe I make the same kind of shape. So maybe this is like this continued theme, and maybe this kind of reminds me of a leaf. So I could do a series of leaves on my piece, right? And maybe I want to do some vines too that connect them, so maybe the vines are kind of wrapping around. If I were to do vines, you can always do coils for that. So if anytime you want to make something like a handle or anything that's sort of like tubular, you just have to make a little ball like this, kind of squeeze it a little bit, and then you just take a flat palm like this and you go back and forth. Okay, so we're just going back and forth, and you make little coils. Okay, so these are little coils, and the more you roll it, the thinner it will become. And you have to move your hand kind of back and forth so that you get even thickness all around. Okay, and there's just some paper. This is just paper that's coming off. That's no big deal. Okay, so let's say we wanted to do a vine wrapping around. I could easily do that, and I'm just going to put this on its side so you can see. This is just to show an example of additive sculpture for your decorative piece. I could easily just go do something like that, right? And then maybe I take my leaf. Maybe my leaf is part of it, right? And that's just one idea, okay? It's you can do something really, really simple. And remember, I can't just leave it like that. If I know I'm going to do this, I have to score it and weld it. So if this were where I wanted my leaf to be, I would score the back of my leaf, remember? And I would score the location of my leaf. I would add a little bit of water with my fingertips. I would just dab it on both the back of my leaf and this part, and then I would give it just a little bit of pressure. Okay, I would do the same thing with this. Okay, so I would take it off, score it, and then score where I was going to put it on and give it a little bit of pressure. Okay, so there you have it. You have both a finished slab piece. This is additive sculpture for decoration as an example. You guys will do a much better job because you will take your time. I did it really quickly. You could also do decorative addition could be just with texture like I did here. Or you could do something like a lid, okay? And you just use the shape of your form to, like as a template, and you just place that down on a slab of clay, you trim around, and that is your lid, okay? So all of those things you can use for your decorative piece of the project, either your slab method or your pinch pot, and you can do both. They're both different projects, okay? Good luck. I can't wait to see what you guys make.